All right, you guys, what's going on? This your boy Town Biz. So it is official. We have a fight: Terrence Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Crawford. So I wanted to show respect to both. You know, September 12th, Allegiant Stadium, Las Vegas. So this will be the first combat sports main attraction boxing event that will be held at Allegiant Stadium. You know, Mark Davis told me he wanted a certain boxing event. Well, this is about as certain as you can get because this is really an oddball fight because at the end of the day, Canelo will be a heavy favorite. Canelo will probably be a 6 or 7 to 1 favorite to win just because he's been campaigning at 168 for a while. This will be Bud's first fight at super middleweight. He's basically going up really 2 weight classes to fight Canelo. I mean, he had one fight at 154, but still at the end of the day, Bud really will be going up 3 weight classes. I think Bud should have took at least one fight at 160, but Bud will be taking on Canelo after a year layoff. This will be the first time Bud will have fought in a year since, his last outing. So Bud will have been out of the ring a year. But Bud has been staying in shape, conditioning himself for this fight. But the fight is official, so it's going to happen. I guess I'll be there. I guess. I'm a big Terrence Crawford fan, but a lot of people are looking at this, that Terrence Crawford is just basically cashing out and he's basically selling his ode to Canelo. At the end of the day, what is Canelo going to get out of this if he wins this fight? He's expected to win this fight. As good as Terrence Crawford is, Terrence Crawford is just, it doesn't seem feasible. It doesn't seem feasible. It doesn't seem that Terrence Crawford can pull this off. I felt that if maybe this fight would have been in a catch weight, and Canelo said that he wasn't going to go down. He wasn't going to give Terrence Crawford any leverage. So he said if Terrence Crawford wanted to fight him, it was going to have to be at 168. So, as far as I'm going to talk about that next, I'm going to break down that fight, what I saw in the Williams Skull fight. And I'm going to talk about the commentary. They might as well flat out say what's on their mind anyway. I know what they want to say, but they know if they say it, they're going to be called racist or it's going to be, but people will defend them and stuff because, people defended Ryan Garcia for the racist comments he made, and black people, like the typical cowards some of them can be, they kept their mouth shut, all because they wanted to get clicks and views, and they wanted, what I'm saying, and they wanted some kind of pat on the back because, when somebody disrespect black people, we always supposed to ignore it and don't say nothing. But, and then at the same time, you got these people thinking that Ryan Coogler has some obligation to put them in his films, or Kendrick Lamar has an obligation to let them perform on Juneteenth. But you don't see that you don't see that kind of love being shown both ways. You don't see it being reciprocated. But nevertheless, that's another video for another day. But with that being said, the fight is going down in September, so that's a long time from now. So everybody have plenty of time to look at flights, get your hotel rooms booked and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely in all likelihood, I'm going to be there. But like I said before, okay, if Bud wins this fight, then Bud should be considered the GOAT because Bud is making more sacrifice than Canelo ever is making. Canelo has been campaigning at 168. And a lot of people are going to say, okay, Canelo, if you beat Bud, so what? You were supposed to beat Bud. Can you imagine being somebody like David Benavidez, who sat up there and waited for years to get a fight with Canelo, and Canelo refused to fight him? Canelo asked for $200 million to fight him, but he's fighting a guy that basically just 2 years ago fought at 147. The fight makes absolutely no sense. But at the end of the day, I'll be at the fight in support of Terrence Crawford in all likelihood. I'm hoping that Terrence Crawford wins this fight, but the logic in me doesn't see how he can do it. At the end of the day, Canelo isn't a monster puncher, but then you have to wonder, could Bud be able to absorb that type of power or those type of punches at 168? So you just have to wonder. Bud is going to have a perfect game plan. And the problem is Bud is going to have to fight enough to where he can sway the judges to go in his favor. Because you already know when you fight Canelo, you already are down at least 4 rounds. So some people don't respect Bud for taking this fight because they saying this is a cash out for Bud. And they're like, Bud don't have no business basically, participating in a fight like this with Canelo. What does Canelo get out of a fight like this? What does he gain from fighting Bud? Once again, you're supposed to win this fight. So if Canelo wins this fight, well, he's supposed to win. But if somebody at 168 or even 175, because Canelo was campaigned at 175 before, if you're looking at him going back up or at least fighting a rematch possibly with somebody like Caleb Plant, I mean, if you just look at Canelo's last few fights, he's been involved in some uninteresting fights. And then he goes into this Bud fight with basically a superstar in Bud, but at the end of the day, Bud is really a 147-pound guy. You almost don't want to count the fight with Magnum at 154. So once again, Canelo was going to have all the advantages. Okay, one, you've been an active fighter. Okay, you've been an active fighter. You fought quite a few times in the last 3 years, where Bud has barely had like 4 fights in the last 4 years. So that's the thing. Once again, you're supposed to win this fight. And I'm waiting for somebody to come on here saying excuses. No, it ain't no excuse. It's just fact. Canelo saw a big time payday, and he saw a fight with a guy that in all likelihood he'd be a heavy favorite to win, a fight that he can win. So once again, what does Canelo get out of winning this fight? Now, Bud has everything to gain. Bud beats Canelo, then Bud possibly is in the GOAT conversation. If Bud becomes undisputed in 3 different weight classes, then technically Terrence Crawford, you can make an argument that Terrence Crawford is the greatest fighter of all time. Terrence Crawford is making more sacrifice than Canelo. He's given up all the amenities. Now, Bud looks a little bit taller than Canelo, but at the end of the day, Canelo is naturally bigger. So once again, we'll have to see what happens in September. But at the end of the day, I know Bud's people gonna be mad at me, but I'm just keeping it 100. I'm very worried about Bud in this fight. And this is just a big risk for him. I know he's going to get paid like $100 million for this fight. And I heard Canelo's going to get like 125 or something like that. But and I expect this fight is going to do very well on pay-per-view. But still, people are going to watch it because it's going to be intriguing. But I'm going to say this again. What does Canelo gain by fighting Bud? Let's just say, he knocked Bud out within 4 rounds. People going to say, like, damn, you picked on a little guy. They're going to say, why didn't you fight somebody your own size? Why didn't you go up to 175 and fight Arthur Beterbiev or a rematch with Bivol or something like that? Or fight, Alexander Vasily. David Morrell. All those dudes were at 168, and you could have fought all those dudes, but you chose to fight a dude that basically 2 years ago was campaigning at 147 and only has had one fight since 2023. So I'll wait. But anyway, we'll get back to this later on. So with that being said, I just wanted to get this quick live across. So there you have it. Bud, Canelo, Bud. September 12th, Las Vegas. So, well, I'm gonna talk about that in the live. I'm gonna talk about that in the live. Just hold on. I'm gonna do the live in like 10 minutes. Let me reset. Live is coming soon to break down that fight.